शूट किया Omkar is there? Huh? So nice to see you. I thought you already forgot the way. Huh? What happened? Which chapters? This circulatory system are we done? No. We have to start with the two systems of वहाँ पे क्या था क्या? हाँ उन्होंने वो Are we done with the chambers of the heart? We are done with the vessels of the heart. We are done with valves of the heart and double circulation. We are done. Double circulation are we done? चलो fast 10 questions लिखेंगे. Double circulation नहीं किया? हाँ आज तुम्हारा मास्क नहीं है इसलिए मुझे लग रही है नई लड़की कौन है? But I never recognized because till now she is wearing for this girl also. अब क्यों मास्क है? ये भी मैंने क्या किया? चलो गुड बेस्ट कामया. आपके लड़के के लिए भी देगा था. हाँ पहली दफे से आपके लड़के मुझसे कौन बच पाएगा? फटाफट 1 मिनट में. फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन नहीं सादा करना है. कौन सा एब्सेंट है? Name the following. Number 1. Name the following. Number 1. Valves between left auricle and left ventricle. Valves between left auricle, left ventricle. Number 2. Vessel that carries. Yes, ma'am. Vessels that carry oxygenated blood to the heart. Third, vessel that carry oxygenated blood to the heart. Third, the chamber of the heart, which pumps, deoxygenated blood. Chamber of the heart which pumps deoxygenated blood. Chamber of the heart. Next, chamber of the heart which receives oxygenated blood. Vessel. Next, vessel which carry deoxygenated blood to the heart. Vessel that carry deoxygenated blood to the heart. Vessels that carry deoxygenated blood to the heart. Process that takes place. हाँ क्या हुआ? Process that takes place. Process that takes place at the respiratory surface. Process that takes place at the respiratory surface. Next, the vessel that arises from left ventricle. 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 Next, when it is 12, you tell me. Next, valve that possesses 3 pocket-like structure. Valve that possesses 3 pocket-like structure. Or 3 cusps, you write. That's a more specific word that you should know. Valve that possesses 3 cusps, meaning pocket-like structure. Next. Huh? Prashant. CUSPS. CUSPS. ये बहुत dominate करती है ना. Now, next is what else you have studied? The vessels that carry. Oh, I was missing you. Vessel that carry oxygenated blood towards the tissues and deoxygenated blood away from tissues. Vessels that carry oxygenated blood towards tissues and deoxygenated blood away from tissues. 12 हो जाए तो बोलना. That much only you can do. Next, vessels that carry I'm sorry. I'll say again, not to be confused. Vessels that carry oxygenated blood towards tissues and deoxygenated blood away from tissues. Next, vessels that carry blood at a very high pressure. Next, at a very high pressure. Next,
This is
Last one.
11.
Next is the largest artery of the body. The largest artery of the body. The chamber from which हो गया 12 हो गया
ये 12
the chamber from which pulmonary artery arises. Pulmonary artery arises. I'll give you just 5 minutes. Let me see who can answer all correct.
pulmonary
Artery arises. कोई cheating नहीं करेगा. Test yourself. I know you all are very smart, very honest. 10 तो आना ही चाहिए फटाफट. Why are you sitting on the occasion? I forgot your name. I'm just going to श्रीराम तो वो वाला भी है जिस तरह बैठेगा.
मेरा नाम है
चलो चलो all of you think for yourself. शैनदीप 5 अगर करेक्ट नहीं होगा भी आज बाहर करने वाली 5 तो करेक्ट होना ही चाहिए. Just 5 minutes I'll give you. खाली एक वर्ड लिखना है.
Chambers of the heart which pumps the oxygen. Chamber या chambers?
Chamber of the heart which pumps मतलब जो चेम्बर से ब्लड निकलता है उसको बोलेंगे पंप्स. नहीं एक ही चेम्बर है जहां से ब्लड हार्ट से बाहर जा रहा है. हाँ चेम्बर ऑफ द हार्ट which pumps always you understand going out from the heart.
किस स्पेलिंग सही है
V है ये V है
एन
V होगा VEN बाकी सही है. One minute. हो गया तन्मय कितना आ रहा है
लास्ट टाइम
झूठ की सच.
दो लेक्चर से ना बाहर
2 लेक्चर कुछ भला संडे
Question as that the vessel that carries oxygenated and deoxygenated blood to and from the tissue. now उसमें like वो common नाम लिखना है या वो actual
के नाम लिखना है.
common like the actual
कॉमन नेम ऑफ द वेसल कॉमन नेम लिखना है. कॉमन नेम ही लिखोगे उसमें कोई
actual नाम नहीं लिखोगे ना.
कोई स्पेसिफिक नाम नहीं. हमारा जब खत्म होगा ना then only you will start करेंगे पहले तो खत्म करेंगे हाँ कृष्णा हाँ done all done
I'm done.
ऐश्वर्या सब हो गया last 2 minutes I can't hear you Nihar किसका आ रहा है
I'm book खोल के देख रहा हूँ. What is the point? वही ना.
ओमकार चलो last 1 more minute and then I'll start asking Start from I will say, I will follow. Read the answer, tell me read the question, keep telling me the answer, one after the other, one by one, chalo fast. No, it's not to you. Well, अरे question तो पढ़ो ना. हाँ. Okay. Bicuspid, what is the other name? Mitral. M-I-T-R-A-L. Those of you who remained absent, take a note of all the answers that I write down. See that you write down the answers correctly now. The first answer, bicuspid valve. Bicuspid valve, also known as mitral valve. Bicuspid valve. Next. You next. Pulmonary vein, vessels that carry oxygenated blood to the heart. Pulmonary vein. Pulmonary vein. Number 3. Next. तन्मय आता है तुमको? Next. Aishwarya, next. What is that question? Chamber of the heart which pumps deoxygenated blood. Right ventricle.
ventrically खाली चलेगा.
Right.
Out of the heart and out bleeding.
नहीं, pumps का मतलब ही है इसे चाहते थे बचपन से तुमको 10th स्टैंडर्ड
तो पंप्स के जगह में कौन सा वर्ड है?
No, not receive. If I talk about right auricle, what is this right auricle doing? Right auricle is supplying blood only to the next chamber, right ventricle. So ये कोई prominent function नहीं है. When you are talking about name the chamber which receives blood, name the chamber which receives oxygenated blood. So oxygenated blood, again understand my question. I am asking you, name the chamber which receives oxygenated blood. तो तुम left ventricle लिखोगे कि right left auricle लिखोगे? Auricle लिखोगे ना? But वैसे तो left ventricle भी तो oxygenated blood receive करता है. वो कोई prominent function नहीं है. That way. Next, Aishwarya, next way. Next. Auricle receives oxygenated blood. Left auricle. Left auricle. Left auricle. Next.
हम ये नहीं पता।
हाँ तो बोलो ना, अरे बोलो।
Vessels that carry deoxygenated blood to the heart.
Vessels that carry deoxygenated blood to the heart. Vena cava.
Superior and
Next. Kirtana, bolo.
Process that takes place at a respiratory surface.
Oxygenation. Oxygenation. Next. Bolo, read out, read out. Read out.
Vessel that arises from left.
Vessel that arises from left ventricle. कौन सा है? कौन सा vessel left ventricle से arise होके बाहर जाता है? Vessel that arises from the left ventricle and leaves the heart, which is it? Aorta. Aorta. Next. Those of you who are not there, keep writing down the answer, then we will go through this part at home. Tricuspid. Tricuspid valve. Next. Tanmay. We know the answer. Next.
Vessels that carry oxygenated blood towards tissues and deoxygenated blood away from tissues.
Capillaries. 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 Next. That's all. That's all. What is the next question? क्या नहीं समझा प्रिशा? But no, this connection I gave you, the other day, what are the vessels one after the other? I'll tell you this point again if it is not clear. Next. You all three were absent. You also. What is the next question? Ayan again, bolo. Which one it is? That is 10. Artery. Next, 11. One bolega. Artery. 11. What is it? Largest artery of the body. Largest artery of the body again is aorta, and 12th is which one?
The chamber from which pulmonary artery arises.
What is the question?
The chamber from which pulmonary artery arises.
Pulmonary artery arises is right ventricle. So in this chapter, there are many questions that you will get. So see that you are able to answer all these type of questions with a structure, part, function. Now I talk about, very good. I hope most of you must have got all of these correct. Now we are going to talk about, okay, this question with capillaries, if you are not skilled men or are talking about aorta, there should not be any noise in the class. Go and get the remote. Increase the temperature.
साथ में वो फैन का पीछे का बटन भी बजता है
क्यों वो यहाँ पे फैन और स्विच और लाइट ये करने आता है
पीछे नाम क्या है नाम ठंडी का
Now, what I said last day also, if you remember, if I start a connection between the aorta, the body tissues, and then back to the heart, then what is the connection? The aorta will always divide into a large number of arteries. The arteries will divide into further finer branches, which are known as arterioles. Arterioles will divide into finer branches known as capillaries. And these capillaries will all go where? It will all go into the body tissues, yes or no? So now, this capillaries on one hand, something like, if I draw that these are the capillaries and this is a network of capillaries and these network of capillaries are all running over the tissues. Then these capillaries would again unite, they would all unite like this resulting in the formation of the rest of these branches or the vessels. So now if I start writing, इन लोगों को ना जैसे वो लोग अब से नेक्स्ट लेक्चर में क्या करने का है, जैसे ये लोग गेट में एंट्री करता है ना, एक एक कोई उनको ना कोई दवाई देने का है.
बेटर बाहर ही क्लास ले लो.
No, I don't want to sweat myself outside. कोई जिससे तुम लोग का बॉडी हीट हो रही है, कोई टॉनिक. Now, next I talk about these capillaries. So these capillaries, what type of blood are they carrying? Nobody will talk now. These capillaries, what type of blood are they carrying to the tissues? They are carrying oxygenated blood. And here what has happened? They have given oxygen and the process of carbon dioxide has entered. So now that the blood vessels run over the tissues, now that the capillaries run over the tissues, the fine capillaries are giving away oxygen and taking in carbon dioxide. So now that they are coming across any tissue, now that they are coming away from any particular tissue, this blood, is it not rich in carbon dioxide? Yes, the blood is rich in carbon dioxide. But first of all, what are these vessels? These vessels are also capillaries. And now if I say these capillaries will first of all unite to form small venules. And then we talk about the veins. And then the veins will form vena cava. And this vena cava will enter into the heart. And then again the exit by the way of the aorta. So this is the entire relation, the schematic relation of the total number of, or if I talk about the total types of the blood vessels that we have in our circulatory system. Now, to summarize here, what we had already studied the other day, that again look at this diagram as a reference. I'm again talking about that the deoxygenated blood from any particular body tissue, let it be any part of the body that we understand, the kidney, the muscles, etc., the stomach, intestine, any part of the body, would enter into which part? The right auricle by vessels known as the vena cava. But now I can also talk about, I must have already explained you all these things, that the vena cava can be broadly classified into two types. The precaval or the superior, and the postcaval or the inferior. What's the difference? If I talk about the precaval, it is coming from the upper regions of the body, upper regions of the heart. And if I talk about the postcaval, it is coming from the lower regions of the heart, the regions which are lower to the heart, actually, to understand that way. And they're already pouring the blood here. And now the role of the vessels and the valves, etc., and the blood entering into the right ventricle, from here going to the pulmonary artery. Then again, and see there. And then we are talking about the pulmonary artery. Then after the pulmonary artery, which divides into two more branches here to enter into the right and the left lung, and the process of oxygenation happens. And again, the blood is entering here by the way of the pulmonary veins. This blood is now oxygenated, which runs down here. And this oxygenated blood has to enter where? Aorta. And then go by the way of the aorta, get distributed to all parts of the body. So if this is what we are talking about as a process of circulation, now let us try understanding with reference to this schematic blood flow. Again, I start with the heart here. Let me again start with the heart here, and with all the chambers and the vessels. You have to remember this. The heart, first of all, would give rise to the aorta, and the blood from the aorta would be now flowing into a large number of arteries. And then we are talking about from the arteries, the blood would enter into from the heart. If I talk about, I have started with the heart, understanding that it is which chamber of the heart? The left ventricle. Okay, the left ventricle. Or if I exactly write this way, the heart and then the left ventricle. I want all of you to keep writing this also. The left ventricle. From the left ventricle, I will talk about the aorta. Then from the aorta, where does the blood go? The blood is going into all the arteries. From the arteries, where does the blood go? The blood is going to all the body tissues. No, 1 minute. I want to include all the 1 minute. I will start this way. Body tissues. Let us start with the body tissues. And from the body tissues, I talk about vena cava. Let us write this way where you remember all the vessels and the valves also. Vena cava. Vena cava, where will the blood enter? It will enter into the right auricle. Then from the right auricle, where should the blood go? The blood will go into the right ventricle. And which valve are we talking about? We are talking about the tricuspid valve. We are talking about the tricuspid valve. Then next is from the right ventricle, the blood will go into the lungs. Then which valve I'm talking about? Pulmonary semilunar valve. Pulmonary semilunar valve. Then from the lungs, the blood will enter into the left auricle. Okay. Pulmonary vein, let us write. Pulmonary vein. Then from the pulmonary vein, it will enter into the left auricle. It will enter into the left auricle. From the left auricle, it will go into the left ventricle. Left ventricle. Which valve is involved here? The bicuspid valve. The bicuspid valve. From the left ventricle, it will go into the aorta. Which valve is involved here? The aortic semilunar valve. The aortic semilunar valve. From the aorta, again, where does the blood go? To all the arteries. From the arteries, the blood will go to the capillaries and then enter into the body tissues. So if this is the connection that we are talking about, where the vessels and the valves are involved, now let us try understanding this entire sequence. Try understanding this now. With this diagram, what we studied just now, let us also try coming across something more, where we are saying that if this is the concept of circulation, this is the entire concept of circulation. This type of a diagram is there in your textbook also. Please note that diagram, tick that diagram, you will get questions on this. Now, look into this diagram. Try to understand this diagram. What is this diagram? I'm talking about the heart here. This is the heart. The organ which is close to the heart, meaning these two organs. Which organs are we talking about? The lungs. And the structures or the parts of the body above and below are all the body tissues. That can be any part. I mean, talk about above, meaning the neck and the head and the brain, all these. And the below parts, that means the stomach and the intestine and the bone and the muscles, all these. So that is how you understand the diagram. So now let us start from here. What does this blue and the red indicate? Deoxygenated and oxygenated blood, very simple. So I had actually started from here saying that from the body tissues, the blood is entering by the way of the vena cava into the right auricle, then right ventricle, then by the way of pulmonary artery going into the lungs. So far, the blood is all deoxygenated. Now the blood changes its form and now it becomes oxygenated. And by the way of the pulmonary veins, entered into the left auricle, left ventricle, goes to the aorta. From the aorta, goes to the body tissues. Again, it changes its form. So now, is it not any moment whenever we talk about any small amount of the blood, 100 ml, 50 ml, any particular amount of the blood that we check, I start from the body tissues. Yes, a specific amount of the blood is entering the heart first in the deoxygenated form. Then it is leaving, going to the lungs, and again entering the heart as an oxygenated form. No? So any specific amount of blood is entering the heart twice. एक बार right side में as deoxygenated, फिर heart से निकल के lungs होके फिर से on the left side of the heart as oxygenated form. So that is what we are talking about as double circulation. Why the concept of double circulation? Because in mammalian heart, every small unit of blood would always enter the heart twice. एक बार right side में in the deoxygenated form, then it will leave the heart, go to the lungs, get oxygen, enough amount of oxygen from the lungs, become oxygenated, and again come and enter the left side of the heart, and then again go to the rest of the body tissues. But यहाँ पे concept ये है कि if I talk about the pulmonary artery, is it supplying blood to the lungs and all the body tissues? No, only the lungs. It is supplying blood only to the lungs. And if I talk about the blood which is entering by the way of the pulmonary vein is only from the lungs. But if I talk about the blood which is entering by the way of the vena cava is from all the tissues of the body except the lungs. So this you have to remember. Now, if I understand that this circulation of the blood from the right auricle to the lungs and back to the heart, from the heart to the lungs and back to the heart, that means circulation of the blood between the heart by the way of lungs back to the heart, this type of circulation or this scheme of circulation will be termed as pulmonary circulation. This is what is known as pulmonary circulation. And the circulation of the blood from the heart to the body tissues and back to the heart. From the heart to the body tissues and back to the heart, if this is what I'm talking about, then this is what is known as systemic. It is not systematic, systemic circulation. This is known as systemic circulation. Students often write this as systematic. Systemic it is. So double circulation is always a characteristic of the mammalian four-chambered heart, and that can be considered under two phases. What are the two phases? Pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. Now, whenever I talk about the structure of the heart, again I go to the previous figure perhaps where I showed you this. Okay, let me complete with this first. So here when I talked about, so what is exactly happening? What is exactly happening? Take a note here that when the blood is going to the body tissues, when the blood is going to the body tissues, every time, what I told you, what would be the fake every time when the blood is going to the body tissues? Whenever the blood enters the body tissues, what next? From the body tissue, the blood or the capillaries which are draining the blood will straight away result in the union, form venules, vein, vena cava, and drop the blood into the right auricle. That is always. There's an exception, but when I talk about the blood which is coming from the stomach and the intestine. So when I talk about the blood which is coming from the stomach and the intestine, there's an exception. Meaning, if I talk about the blood which is coming from the muscles and the legs and the kidneys, they would straight away unite to form veins and go to form the vena cava, go and unite to form the vena cava. But if I talk about the veins which are coming from the stomach, I talk about, by the way, this is the heart, from the aorta, arteries have entered where? The arteries have entered into the stomach. The arteries have entered into the stomach. See here. The arteries from here, the aorta comes and the arteries have entered into the stomach and the intestine. This is the stomach and the intestinal part, the gut. So now, this stomach is also receiving an artery, which will get some oxygenated blood. The intestine also will get some artery. Do you still remember the artery which receives oxygenated blood for the kidneys? Renal artery. So now that way, when I said that the aorta receives, or the aorta, where did we write the aorta? Okay, aorta. So I already told you that if this is the aorta, the aorta should be supplying, oxygenated blood to every particular tissue of the body by the way of arteries and capillaries. But this aorta, when it is with reference to the stomach and the intestine, there is a little bit of an exception. What is the exception here? The exception here is that if I am talking about the aorta which divides into arteries, and now say suppose I am talking about an artery which is entering into the stomach. I am talking about an artery which is entering into the intestine. Here a little bit of a difference is there. So this artery which has entered into the stomach, we will call it as the gastric artery. And hence the vein which is coming out from here, we will talk about this as the gastric vein, and then the artery which enters into the intestine as the mesenteric, and then the vein coming from this would be termed as the mesenteric vein. Now these terms don't take too much of stress to remember this. This is just optional for you. It is there in your book, so generally you don't get too many questions on this. तो ये अभी समझ में ये आना चाहिए कि had this been any other tissue, ये आर्टरी सीधा कैपिलरीज बनेगा और वेना कावा के साथ ज्वाइन हो जाएगा. बट अगर स्टमक एंड इंटेस्टाइन की बात है तो the route is little bit longer. तब क्या होगा? This arteries of course will supply oxygenated blood to the stomach, and now that the vein which is coming out, जिसको हम gastric vein बोलेंगे, will it immediately go and join with the vena cava? No, rather this will join, resulting in the formation of a specific vein. This will join, resulting in the formation of a specific vein, जिसको portal vein कहते हैं. And now by the liver, when I talk about the liver, say suppose now I'm talking about the liver, this will go towards the liver, and now the vein which is going and joining with the veins of the liver, इसको बोलेंगे hepatic portal vein. Hepatic portal vein. Then from the liver, the vein which comes out, this vein will be known as the hepatic vein, and this hepatic vein will go and join with the vena cava. This will go and join with the vena cava. Okay, so this hepatic vein goes and joins with the vena cava. So this is the difference. I repeat again, what is the necessity? What is the significance? I said body, rest of the body tissue, they will all follow one particular rule, that is from the artery, jab koi blood, it will go to the muscles and the kidneys and bone and etc. etc. From every part of this body, the veins will come out, go and unite with vena cava. If it is the stomach and the intestine, जो artery stomach and intestine में आएगा, and then the veins which come out, these veins will first of all unite to form a vein known as the portal vein, and now that they are entering towards the liver, now this vein is known as the hepatic portal vein, and the characteristic of this hepatic portal vein is the moment it enters, it divides into a large number of tributaries inside the liver. Necessity यही है that it will result in the diffusion of whole lot of nutrients that this blood is containing, because already you have studied the process of digestion and absorption is happening in the stomach and the intestine. So now that I talk about a blood vessel which is coming away from the stomach, coming away from the intestine, will it only contain deoxygenated blood or deoxygenated blood plus blood loaded with nutrients? Yes or no? So now that's the reason the blood flow and the skim for these two organs are a little bit different, that the blood will directly not be poured into the heart, but first go and deposit the nutrients into the liver, then go and deposit the blood into the heart. तो ये जो complete system of circulation है applicable only for the stomach and the intestine, इसको बोलेंगे hepatic portal system.
So only the gastric vein and the mesenteric vein are forming the portal.
I told you majorly two. It is all over the small intestine, stomach, pancreas, large intestine.
So all the organs together, their veins form the portal.
So actually, but majorly you, in your portion also, now it is just the start of this concepts you are studying. So majorly these two, agar tum yaad rakhoge, that is more than enough for you. So the stomach, the veins which are coming out from the stomach and the intestine, you don't even have to specify large and small right now. The veins which are coming out from the intestine and the stomach are loaded with nutrients, because you already know absorption ho chuka hai. And if the absorption has happened in the intestine, so obviously the blood coming out from the intestine is full with those glucose and amino acids and fatty acids, all these things, no? So if the blood is directly dropped into the heart, is it not the body losing all those nutrients? Yes. So इसीलिए पहले liver में जाके सब deposition होगा, and then the blood will go and get deposited into the heart. Is this understood or not?
Can you see from where the iliac artery goes?
From?
Iliac artery.
The iliac artery is also from the intestinal region. The mesenteric, the iliac, all these are from the intestinal region. Now, something more that you have to understand here is, Something more that you have to understand here is, let me go back to this figure so that you understand better here. Again, I'm talking about this figure. Okay, check it. Now I'm saying the other day I already told you that when one chamber undergoes contraction, what is the concept of contraction? Contraction of the heart wall. What are those two terms we have used? We talked about systole and we talked about diastole. How will you define these two terms? Diastole means relaxation of the heart walls and systole means contraction of the heart wall. Ye definition yaad rakho. It comes in your paper always. Diastole and systole. What is the meaning of diastole and systole? So now just keep understanding this. It's very simple. If you know the diagram, it's very, very simple. Now I'm talking about ye jo right auricle hai. Now when the right auricle is filling blood, what will we say? The right auricle is undergoing systole or diastole? Diastole. So now that the right auricle is filling blood, yahan se the right auricle is filling. Uska chehra mat dekh bhai, yahan pe jisko na. तो मैं तो उसको पूछ my Hindi is very bad, don't worry. तो
I'm सुन रहा हूँ, कर गया.
You listen here now, look here, try to understand. Now, when I'm talking about that the blood is entering here, keep answering. The blood is entering here. The right auricle is undergoing diastole. Ab jab the right auricle is filling blood, should these valves remain open, tricuspid? No, the valves will remain closed. Closed meaning the valves are relaxed. These are muscular flaps. The valves are relaxed and closed. But this chamber will have a definite amount of blood that it can store. So after that amount of the blood is almost been obtained, what will happen? These valves will get the message and they will start the process of contraction and a pathway banega. एक pathway banega and the blood comes down here. Understand very attentively. Now that the blood is coming down here, this chamber is undergoing and this chamber is undergoing systole. Ab jab this particular chamber is filling blood, after some time, as the blood has started coming down, this particular chamber has started filling blood. This valve will again, jo abhi open tha, this valve will again close. But it will close with a characteristic sound. It closes with a characteristic sound, jisko heart sound kehte hain. Did you ever come across or did you ever observe that the doctors, they always put those stethoscopes and they can hear, and there are today so many different type of tests and diagnoses which have been done, like those eco 2Ds and etc, different type of tests where you can hear actually those heart sounds so nicely. So now that we are talking about that, this chamber, when it is filling blood, tricuspid valve will slowly close with a characteristic sound, and this sound is called the love sound. This is called the love sound. So now this valve, why should it close back? Why should it? Why can't it remain open? To prevent the backflow of blood. So always remember, the function of a valve is always to prevent the backflow of the blood. So abhi ye band hai and this chamber is filling blood. Now that this chamber is filling blood, the blood should get a way to release. So the blood should find a way. So by that time, when this chamber is almost filled with blood, which is this valve? I told you already, at the base of the pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery ke base mein pulmonary semilunar valve. So when the right auricle fills in blood, which valve starts opening? Pulmonary semilunar valve, and the blood will enter into the pulmonary artery. And then the rest is the oxygenation and all. And after that, by the way of the pulmonary vein, the blood again enters into left auricle. After it enters into left auricle, now the left auricle is undergoing the process of diastole. It is undergoing the process of diastole. So during left auricle or diastole, which valve should start opening? Bicuspid. Now the bicuspid will start opening up, contracting and opening up, and the blood flows down in the left ventricle as the blood now fills up. Which valve will close? Which valve will close? Bicuspid. And which one will open? Aortic semilunar. So by the time this aortic semilunar valve is open, the oxygenated blood from the left ventricle finds a way to go into the body tissues. So if you have noticed, every time when one set of valves, one pair of valves closes, the other gradually opens up. So now I was talking about that if this closes, the pulmonary semilunar valve opens up, and now when the blood has flown into the pulmonary artery, when the blood has gone into the pulmonary artery and back into the lungs, when the blood has gone into the lungs, then what will happen to this pulmonary semilunar valve? It will start closing. The blood has moved away from the pulmonary. The blood has moved away by the way of the pulmonary artery. The blood is no more in the pulmonary artery. It has already gone. Or if I say the other way, when the blood has come back into the left auricle, and when the blood is now coming down into the left ventricle, at that time, should the aortic semilunar open? No, at that time, the aortic semilunar will remain closed. The aortic semilunar will open only when the blood is filled here. So when these two vessels with their respective valves, which vessels I'm talking about, pulmonary artery and the pulmonary semilunar, aortic artery and the aortic semilunar. So when these two valves closes, when the semilunar valve closes, another heard sound is observed or heard, and that is what is known as the dub or the dub. And these are known as heard sounds. So these are the heard sounds that we understand. Two heard sounds. What is the heard sound again? Now, when we are talking about the heard sound, what are the two characteristic heard sound? You are asked questions. When does love take place? When does love sounds occur? What are you supposed to write? When does love sounds occur? Love sounds occur when the atrioventricular valves closes. That should be your answer. Atrioventricular. Why do we say these are atrioventricular, tricuspid and bicuspid? Because these are between the auricle and the ventricle. So now, if I have to talk about the when does love sound occur? When the atrioventricular valve closes. When the atrioventricular valve closes. And when will be the dub sound heard? When the semilunar valve closes. When the semilunar valve closes. So this is what you are supposed to remember. Then next is we are also coming across another concept, that is blood pressure. Now that we have been already talking about a concept of arteries, veins, and the characteristic feature that the artery carries blood at a high pressure, and the left ventricle is pumping blood at a very high pressure. So all these features now that you know, let us try understanding that all of you must have very much either experienced for yourself, or you must have seen your parents, family members who had checked blood pressure. So now that we are talking about what exactly has been tested there, what exactly has been measured there. When I talk about that somebody is examining the blood pressure, what has been actually measured? Do you know what has been actually measured?
Pressure inside the vessel.
The pressure of the blood in the vessels, which is associated with the contraction of which chamber of the heart? Left ventricle, because it is the left ventricle which contracts at the greatest force, and it is the left ventricle's blood. It is the oxygenated blood of the left ventricle which is moving away of the heart to reach the different body tissues. And left ventricle, how many number of times it is contracting, and the blood has been thrown to all the body tissues by the way of the blood vessel. That is what has been monitored with that blood pressure device. So now, if I talk about the concept of blood pressure, all of you more or less understand how do we generally write blood pressure. Say suppose I'm talking about the ideal blood pressure, 120 by 80. I talk about 160 by, or say suppose normal blood pressure, if I'm talking about millimeter mercury, and then I talk about 140 by 84 millimeter mercury. And I'm talking about 150 by 92 millimeter mercury. Which is abnormal? Which one is abnormal?
150 by 92.
150 by 92. So now what are we understanding? What is this 120? The force of contraction of or the force of contraction, systole of the heart walls. That is called the pressure when the heart wall contracted. The pressure with which the wall of the heart forced the blood. And maximally we are trying to understand the ventricular systole. Ventricular systole, and that also now you understand is the left ventricular systole, to be very specific, no? So what is the pressure during the left ventricular systole and the pressure during the left auricular diastole? So now when we are talking about, I'm sorry, the left, the right auricular diastole. So now that we are talking about this pressure, 120 by 80, the upper limit and the lower limit that we talk about is associated with the contraction systole of the heart and the diastole of the heart, associated majorly with the left ventricle. Is this normal? Not exactly, but in today's lifestyle, we understand today's lifestyle, still medical science say that, okay, 130 till 140 also it is generally considered to be the adequate amount of blood pressure that can happen, but anything above 140 is something to be considered serious. Now, what would happen if somebody's pressure of the blood is 140 and above persistently? Now, say suppose, what is the meaning of a person suffering from high blood pressure when the blood pressure remains above 140 and the lower limit remains something above 85 and crossing 90 persistently. Say suppose now if you walk and run for 10 minutes and after that you check your blood pressure immediately, is your blood pressure supposed to be 120 by 80 or 80? No, not at all. As it is, for the be 140 something around jayega. But you take a period of rest for 5 minutes, it should somehow come down to something around 130, 35. That's normal for all of us. But if a patient is, or if a person is sitting down and even after rest of 10 minutes, view unka pressure something around 140, 50, 60 rehta hai, that is something to be worried about, and that may be because of various reasons. So you understand what is meant by upper limit and what are those upper denominations and the lower denominations generally referring to. So about the blood pressure only that much you have to study.
What's the maximum lower
Maximum, highest point you're talking about. Highest point can be many when we are talking about 80 ideal hai, but quite often we come across 150 also. People may have 150 and that's very, very serious a condition. Diastolic pressure, वैसे भी, if it is higher than 90, it is really very serious. 90 से ऊपर तो कभी भी नहीं जाना चाहिए. But if the systolic pressure, they say systolic pressure अगर 160 तक भी जाएगा, 165, also it is okay. But actually these are people who need medication. But for us, normally, whenever we are running, walking, jumping, cycling, whatever, जो भी अगर हम करते हैं, then also the blood pressure immediately also if we check should not be more than 150. 150, 160 and above, something very serious. Some progress checks which are related with this part of the chapter, I want you to take it as a homework. Complete karo as homework. In this chapter, the major part of the chapter is all done. Just few more definitions only that we have to deal with. We are done with this chapter, and the next day when we complete with this chapter, I intend to start with the next chapter. Let's see, maybe what chapter you want. That is what you need now. Okay. So we'll see with chemical coordination. Please and count this particular chapter. We are almost done with just few more phrases. Huh?